Welcome to lesson 11 of Mr. T's Art Club. 2-point perspective, scraping paint over board. Before we get started, I wanted to show you this. This is Dorsey Darty, who's in year 9. Brilliant example of 1-point perspective. This is Hannah Nixon Lee's amazing drawing using the 2-point perspective.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in again to Mr. T's Art Club. This is lesson 11, and we're going to take perspective onto another level using paint. Gosh, my hair is getting too long. I want the hairdresser to open. I thought I'd do this early as well because it's a lovely sunny day and it's going to get really hot, so I wanted to do it in a nice cool environment. So if you're doing your artwork at home, just try and find somewhere that's really suitable and that's nice and chilled out, because otherwise it can get stressful and we don't want that. Art's meant to be fun. Now we're going to be using paints, but I know that a lot of you may not have access to paints at home, and if you can't buy any, then I've got some nifty ideas. So maybe someone in your house likes to paint their nails, so you could try and rob, well, always ask permission, or have any of their old nail varnishes. So I've raided my wife's cupboard and I found these old ones. The other thing that you might find is in your shed or in a cupboard, you might find some old paint. Now that's a good thing to use as well. Always ask permission. Don't take stuff that's meant to be used to paint the walls later on, and then your mum goes, well, where's all that paint gone? And to be honest with you, you are only going to be using little parts. The other thing you need is something to paint onto. So again, if you can't find anything, you can always use a pizza box, back of a pizza box. It might be some card that you had from some packaging. Could be cardboard if you want to. But I found some board that I could use, and that's quite sturdy and it's quite nice for using paint. And then I've actually had some building work done on the house, so I found this old bit of wood and I'm going to use that today. So, left over, it's not old. The other thing you need is some bits of card to scrape with. So you need to get some card like this or some cardboard from a box. So that's all the equipment that you're going to need. If you've got a paintbrush, that's handy, but if you don't worry, we can use some of the card to canter some of the paint. Okay, so let's get started.
Peter Mattiassi is the artist we're looking at today. This is a clear example of 2-point perspective as well, so we're going to use this as our inspiration.
The artist we're going to be looking at is Peter Mattiassi, and I found him on the Saatchi Gallery website, which is really good for finding new artists. And he uses 2-point perspective in some of his building drawings. So that's what I'm going to do here. Now, if you watched the last lesson, lesson 10, you'll have seen that we had 2 vanishing points. So I'm going to put those on the edges there. And this time I'm going to have the building kind of protruding out here. So the first job is whatever you're drawing on, so it could be card, it could be a piece of wood, could be paper. If you want, if that's all you've got, then that's fine. Just use whatever you can find in the house. So this is going to be my main building here on the edge, and then that's going to go at a steep decline to that vanishing point there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this up into sections. So I'm going to have one part of the building, I want it nice and wide, here, and then another part of the building here. Now there's one particular picture that I'm thinking of with Peter Mattiassi, so I will show you that one in a second. And I'm getting inspiration from that. So I'm drawing everything out, using quite a thick pencil here, or dark pencil should I say. It's a B, so it shows up on this piece of wood. And I'm just going to keep it simple, I'm not going to make it too complicated. My ruler doesn't quite fit there, so I'm just going to estimate where that little line is going to go, and that one there. And then once you've got your basic shapes in, then you're going to need masking tape. Now, if you haven't got masking tape, you could use any other kind of tape, gaffer tape, sellotape. But if you're using paper or card, you need to kind of de-stickify the tape first. And the way you do that is by putting it on a piece of clothing like this. So I'm just putting it on my apron at the moment. And it takes some of the stickiness off. Do it a couple of times if you feel like it's still too sticky. Take some of the fabric off and makes it less sticky. Now, I don't need to do that because I'm using card. So I'm gonna just put the masking tape on the areas I want to keep covered. Because these are the areas I'm gonna apply paint. And it means I'm left with the nice texture of the wood in the background, which is one of the reasons why I picked this. Called OSB. People like to refer to it as chipboard. Coming back in fashion. You see it everywhere. Notice as well that I prepared myself and the area. So what I've got is an old bit of wood to work on. Now it might be that you use some newspaper, or you've got an old piece of tablecloth that you can put down. And also you need to make sure that you're covered as well. So I'm wearing an apron, but you might wear an old t-shirt or an old shirt that you don't mind getting paint on. So I'm now covering up all the sections that I don't want paint to go on. Kind of going around the main body of the buildings, so I know where I'm going to be putting the paint. These are the little fiddly bits here. I want to make sure I get that nice straight edge. Masking tape, if you haven't got any, it's always a handy thing to have, because in art you always want to be using things to block things off. It's just so useful to have. So here we go. Put that on there. There we go. Oh, it's such a warm day. It's lovely. Right. So once you've got all the tape on, then going to be needing to get the paint. Now, again, always ask help from someone else, from a parent, from an adult, if you're unsure of what paint to use. Worst case scenario, if you don't have any paint, you can always just use the tape and then colour in with pencils and stuff like that. But you might need to use a screwdriver to get the lid off any of the old tins. I mean, that's proper manky, that one, but you might be able to use it. And remember to ask permission if you're going to be using these. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to be doing like a scraping technique using old bits of card. So I found this packaging here, and I'm just going to simply cut out loads of bits of card. Now, I would suggest you have lots of this cut ready. You don't need to worry about it being neat, but you do want straight edges to help you out. So I'm just going to cut along like this. Again, if you're using scissors, you need to make sure you are using them carefully and you've got permission from whoever is looking after you at home. I love painting, absolutely love it. This is one of my favourite things. You just lose yourself in it. So now what I'm going to do is now you could experiment first actually. So if you've never done this kind of thing before, get a bit of your card or something that you're just going to practice on. So on the edge of this paint here, edge of the card, sorry, I'm going to put blobs of the nail varnish. Now nail varnish Oh, it smells really nice, doesn't it? That's because it's like solvent based, so it's not, you can't wash it with water. So if you get this on you, you need to either use nail varnish remover or some white spirit. So try not to get it on you. I'm just going to put some paints. Now if it's not coming out very well, I might have to pour this out onto something. Do you know what, I'm just going to leave that one upside down. You want to work fairly quickly before this dries. So say you've got that. Is that coming out? Yes, it is. Alright, I'll use that in a minute. And then once you've got a bit of paint on, practice by just scraping it across like that. And you get these kind of cool effects. Now I definitely need a lot more paint on the nail varnish. So just be really careful. Now notice as well, I've picked my colours carefully. So I've picked warm colours here. And I'm also going to put on some contrasting blue. So be careful because it does drip quite easily. Some of these are worse than other parts.
Here's another example of Peter Matjassi's work. I chose this because of the colours that he's chosen. You might not be able to find the exact the same, but you know, experiment.
So I'm going to carry on here. I'm really not happy with these colours. I don't think it's working very well. So I'm going to just put that to one side. It's all right to not have things working well. What I am going to do is I'm going to use some of the old paint. So I'm going to use one bit of card to dip into the paint and then scrape a bit on. So this is going to be my main body of paint. Get some blue as well. Ooh, stretch over. Making a right mess. Look at all this. I've got blue paint here, I've got pink paint there. I'm just messing around because it's only through experimenting that we can be creative. It doesn't matter if we get it wrong. Now, a lot of preparation for this, but the reason we do that is because it means that when we get the actual paint onto the piece of work, it goes really quick. Like the whole thing's covered really quite quickly, and you don't want to go over the top. Right, I'm going to have a go at scraping this now. Placing it down as flat down as possible, and scrape that across. Do the same again. I think I'm going to get some more of that blue. Now you can use the same bit of card or another piece of card. That's why I said before it's really important to have loads of pieces of card. So you might still have enough paint on there to use it again, or you might need to put more on. But you don't want to go over the top of that again and again, because otherwise it just messes up the technique. Side. I'm keeping it as straight as possible. Now, this might kind of act as like background of these shapes, and then we can maybe work over them once it's dry. make this side darker, so I'm going to use a lot more of this dark blue. In fact, it's coming out really slow. I might even carefully tip some out. Gosh, it really smells. Now, the paint from the tubs is water-based and this is solvent-based. So they're starting to kind of mush and mix, and I quite like the texture it creates. Oh, this is looking awesome. You know, it might be that you end up actually painting some bits as well. So you can either use a brush or use paints. Oh, that's proper old, that one. So I'm just experimenting, seeing how this goes. Kind of crisscrossing that. It's helped, I think. A new piece of card for that. So I'm gonna start kind of putting some neater areas in, using the edge of the card. Leave this to dry and come back and do some more sections over the top. If you're not leaving it dry, if you don't leave it to dry, then it could end up the next layer, when you put the tape on, it might peel off paint that's already on there. To kind of put in some marks like that. So I'm just gently pouring it on near the edge, letting it drip down, just to make some Right, I'm happy with that for now. I mean, if you look at all the mess I've made, it's just ridiculous. I've got all this rubbish card here, there. This is the fun bit, because now we get to reveal what's left underneath. Don't worry if it's not worked straight away. It's all about practicing, and we can neaten things up with a pencil or a pen later. So once this is dry, I might end up working into it some more colours. Always handy to have a bin nearby, because now I've got all this sticky tape and everything. Yeah. Right, I'm going to leave that to dry. It shouldn't take too long, maybe about half an hour, and then we'll come back to it. So that didn't take long. I just put it out in the sunshine to dry, and it was done in like 15 minutes. So what I'm going to do now is going to tape off this area here. I'm going to paint it that green colour. So here we go. Now, I also want to make sure I get these little bits here done in green, because I think that'll help with the composition. Colour of it. I'm really enjoying this. I like the way the texture of the wood shows through in some of these marks. Sticking the tape on, trying to make sure that all the edges just exactly what I want. Do you know what? Oh no, I will. I was going to say I might just go across that gap there and then come back and paint the other parts, but I'm going to do it now. Because this is kind of rough and ready, I'm not too worried about making mistakes. It's a bit too small. And then what I'm going to do is, once this is dry, well, I'll show you once, because I can work on the top part whilst that's drying. I'm going to do some drawing over the top. I think I'm going to use pencil, but you could use pen. Anything to make a mark. And I'm neatening up that edge there where the paint bled underneath. Now this is I think it's tile paint, so I think it's, oh, I like that. Solvent based, this one. Now what I've done is I've just, because it's old and I've not remixed it, we've got like this kind of cool pattern going on. Subtle, that I like that. It's got some of the wood showing through as well. Now I am a little bit worried that when I take this off it'll start to bleed, so I might just leave that to dry. I almost got off. Yeah, I'm going to leave that to dry before I take it off, because I'm worried that it would, where it's all quite runny, it'll run. Okay, so back in a few minutes. Hopefully not too long.